On October 13, 2014, hundreds of protesters, both students and non-students, gathered around a clock tower on St. Louis University's campus to protest the police shooting of Vonderrit Myers Jr., the 18-year-old son of a university employee. Vonderrit's death occurred just months after the police killing of Michael Brown, an unarmed teenager in nearby Ferguson, Missouri. The protest transformed into a week-long sit-in where students and community members held discussions about race, equality, and poverty. The demonstration culminated in an agreement between the students and the university's administration to commit to various initiatives. In recent years, students have organized around racial justice, sexual assault, climate change, the Second Amendment, mass shootings, and student loan debt, among other issues. Today's activism builds on the work of past generations of students who have used their First Amendment freedoms to hold power accountable. Students have stood up to political orthodoxy, challenged unjust laws, and spoke out against restrictive speech codes. While student protests have occasionally crossed into unprotected conduct in speech, you as students should understand that within the bounds of the First Amendment, you have a great deal of freedom to engage in protests and demonstrations. Take, for example, the period after World War II, when Senator Joseph McCarthy led a national campaign to rid the United States of communism. Taking advantage of the public spheres of Soviet influence, McCarthy used the federal government to investigate private and public institutions across the country for signs of communist propaganda. McCarthy's actions posed a specific kind of existential threat for universities, which traditionally enjoy intellectual and academic autonomy from the government. And so, when the Indiana Textbook Commission announced in 1953 that it was banning the story Robin Hood from all public K-12 schools due to themes they thought supported communism, a group of college students decided they had to act decisively. Using a sack of chicken feathers from a local farm and green dye, the students pinned the feathers to their shirts in symbolic protest of the book ban. News of the Green Feather movement spread across local and college newspapers throughout the country and spurred similar demonstrations at Harvard University, the University of Michigan, the University of Wisconsin, the University of Illinois, the University of Chicago, Purdue University, and UCLA. It even inspired an opposing Red Feather movement at Harvard and the University of Indiana, made up of pro-McCarthy students, though their efforts were short-lived. Private colleges were also susceptible to government scrutiny during the McCarthy era. At Sarah Lawrence College, 18 faculty members were targeted by the government. Students published statements in the New York Times in support of their professors, while the student newspaper tracked and published information regarding the attacks on their academic freedom. In an era defined by collective silence and ideological conformity, these students chose to openly criticize government censorship. In other words, they had to fear the consequences of silence more than the consequences of speaking out. Few other students in American history understood this more than a group of Black students in 1960 in Greensboro, North Carolina, whose protest ignited the civil rights movement. When 4 Black students from North Carolina A&T University sat down at a whites-only lunch counter in a department store in Greensboro, North Carolina, to protest racial segregation, the waitress didn't know what to do. Ezell, David, Franklin, and Joseph had been planning the demonstration against the city's segregation laws for weeks. It was not uncommon for protesting Black Americans to be arrested for resisting the status quo. In their training, the students had practiced being shoved and thrown to the ground. The plan was to remain calm and not to respond to physical aggression. It's easy to forget how radical the ideas of civil rights protesters were at the time. Many states sent Black Americans to jail for protesting segregation by using discriminatory laws restricting where and when people could assemble. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. himself was arrested in Albany for simply praying outside of a government building for the end of racial segregation. Around the same time as the civil rights movement, students also began protesting the United States' war with Vietnam. Using similar nonviolent strategies, college students around the country held teach-ins, passed out flyers, and organized massive rallies. However, not all college administrators were welcoming of this kind of political activity. At the University of California, Berkeley, the president of the university announced a policy prohibiting advocacy of political causes or candidates, as well as outside political speakers. In response, a group of students started a campaign against the administration's speech codes in what became known as the free speech movement. The free speech movement at Berkeley was a wildly successful student campaign dedicated to ensuring students' right to discuss ideas freely on and off campus without fear of administrative censorship. As Arthur Goldberg, one of the protest leaders, put it, "The most important thing is to make this campus a marketplace for ideas." For Goldberg and other activists, the university's policies restricting student political activity denied students the opportunity to deliberate new and creative political solutions to public issues, a role he and others eagerly desired. Over the course of American history, students and faculty at colleges and universities have fought to protect their right to think and speak freely. They have played an important role in upholding First Amendment freedoms of speech, press, assembly, and petition. These individuals understood immediately that a healthy democracy rests on the ability and willingness of its citizens to hold power accountable. As you begin your first year of college, we want you to see yourself as part of this long tradition of student activism.